I had a pretty good relationship with Bill Belichick. You had to be prepared. If he starts talking about some play in the third quarter where you were probably taking a nap on the couch, he let you know about it. So he was really, really prepared. The fun part about it was before the red light went on, he'd walk in one day and he'd be shaking his head. I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "Did your parents help you move into college, help you move into any dormitory?" I said, "No." I said, "My father drove me to Wonderland, gave me a quarter, and told me good luck." And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "When I went to Phillips Andover, my dad bought me a one-way train ticket to Hartford, Connecticut, because he couldn't afford anymore. So I get out of the train in Hartford, Connecticut, and I stuck my thumb out, and I hitchhiked from Hartford, Connecticut, all the way up to Phillips Andover. That's how I got there. If I didn't have some nice guy picking me up," he said, "I might still be standing there with my thumb out." But that's just the way it was back then, Your parents didn't do anything for you. Now we do everything for our kids. And one day he comes in, he's shaking his head. I go, "Well, what now?" He goes, "Costa Rica." "Where did you go on spring break?" I said, "I don't know, Revere Beach, maybe. I don't know if I ever went there." He goes, "My daughter's going to Costa Rica. Do you know how you get to Costa Rica? You get a flight to Miami, then you get a flight from Miami to someplace in Costa Rica, then you got to get on a boat, and then get another boat and get on the island. Whatever happened to just going down and having a good time in warm weather and coming home and going back to school?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Those are the things." Then the red light would go on. He goes, "Well, they're really good in three. They're good offense, good defense team, good special teams, And I said, "Boy, I'd love to have some off the camera stuff on the camera." Well, I always said there was like an 8-inch block of ice between you and Bill Belichick. And how do you thaw that ice out? And everybody has tried. And I'm not saying I'm his best buddy, but I still do keep in touch with him. I text him. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that his dad was a coach, my dad was a coach. He went to Phillips Andover, I went to Phillips Exeter for a year. 3 of my roommates my freshman year were from Andover. They both played lacrosse and football with Bill Belichick. 3 of his roommates down at Wesleyan were from Phillips Exeter, who would play sports with me at Exeter. So, all right, we've got maybe 3 of the 8 inches melted away right here. And then, so I played quarterback in college, and I remembered a lot of the terminology. He'd say, "Well, this is the Mike, this is the Sam, this is the Willie, cover 2, we go sky or cloud coverage right here." And I think he knew I wasn't a phony. And so now it kind of got, it's melting. And then he said, "Now, were you a water boy for your dad?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "What did you use to clean cleats? Did you use a wire brush or a putty knife?" And I said, "Oh, I was a putty knife guy all the way, because you really get the dirt out there." He goes, "Yeah, I was a wire brush guy." Now, when you went out to the huddle with water, did you have a bucket with a ladle, or did you? I said, "No, we had these stupid trays that had 24 paper cups on them. And by the time you get out there, half of them were gone, half of them had grass in them, and they were lousy." He goes, "Yeah, I went with a bucket, but," he says, "I need another guy to pick it up because I wasn't strong enough to pick it up." So little stories like that. And then we'd always, the week of the Andover Exeter game, we'd always write on the balustrader. If Exeter won, I made sure it got on there. If Exeter lost to Andover, I said, "All right, we're going to go to break right now. We'll be right here." He'd go, "Whoa, we're not done yet. Give me the pen." And he'd write on the balustrade, "Andover 24, Exeter 12. Now we can go to break." Well, one of the things we used to talk about before the camera lit up and before the red light came on, we would talk about, I said, when I was in high school and when I was in college, I said, sometimes I felt like on Wednesday, the game was won on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And we just knew it going in, and we were right. I said, "Is it the same in pro football, or do you not know what you're going to get?" He goes, "It's exactly what it is in pro football, even more so. Because when you're in college, you're dealing with 17, 18, 20-year-old kids. Here you're dealing with grown men." And I said, "Have you ever felt that you won a game on Wednesday or Thursday?" He goes, "Absolutely, absolutely. I can tell just the way we are in practice, how mentally sharp our team is, how they are not bothered by any type of distractions whatsoever." And he was right. And I say to him a lot, I said, all right, what's your gut feeling going into this one? And he said, 2 bad practices so far this week. I really don't know. I can't tell. And another thing he'd always say was, he never knew what type of team he had until the 6th game of the season. And I would always tell everybody that. They said, well, the Patriots are 0-2, you know, and where'd they end up? Well, they won the Super Bowl. Okay, I proved my point. And he would say, after the 6th week, I know what type of team I have. And he pretty much, the one thing that he couldn't believe was that he won that Super Bowl against the Rams. But he was confident. But he looks back on it, he said it might have been, of all the Super Bowl teams he had, it might have been the least talented. But it had something in here that some of those other teams didn't have. And Belichick can tell that, and he knows right away. He's had so many guys that played so far above their level. So far above their level. And that's due to his coaching and his motivational skills. One of the things he would do, covering the preseason games, on the day before the game, we'd have a meeting with the coach. And the coach would tell us, he wouldn't really tell us what was going to happen, but I was working with Don Criqui and Randy Cross. And Don Criqui always asked the first question. And his question was, who's the most improved player on the team? And he says, well, Stephen Neal's doing really good, but I really like this kid Brady. And then Criqui would go, well, what guy is Tom Brady? Well, what guy? Tom Brady. Well, it was almost like we're on to Cincinnati. You know, years before we were on to Cincinnati, we were on to Tom Brady. Now, we realized Bledsoe had just signed a contract of more than $100 million. Yet Bill Belichick really didn't care. He wanted what was best for the team. And I had this gut feeling, because the answer to every single question was Tom Brady, Tom Brady, Tom Brady. And I happened to have my notebook with me, and I had the depth chart from a game against Buffalo the previous December. And Brady wasn't even anywhere. He was the 4th quarterback. In fact, he wasn't even in uniform. He wasn't even on the sideline. He watched the game in the stands. And all of a sudden now he's the answer to every question that we're asking Bill Belichick. We could ask him, what about the punting? Well, Tom Brady is a good punter. He would have answered it that way. And I remember walking out of that meeting, and I said to one of our producers, I said, this is it. This is it for Drew Bledsoe. He's a dead man walking. It's just a question of time when he's going to pull the trigger and put Tom Brady in as his #1 quarterback. So we start the 2001 season, and Tom Brady is the backup quarterback. So he went from 4th string to 2nd string. And that's when Drew Bledsoe got the vicious hit from Mo Lewis that nearly cost him his life and inserted Tom Brady into the game. So Brady got the starting job, not the way that Bill Belichick envisioned or the way Tom Brady wanted to get the job, but he got it that way and never relinquished it. And I remember we did Patriots All Access that week, and Tom Brady was my guest, and he came out with a Red Sox hat on, a T-shirt, his cleats, and socks. And after we did the interview, I said to him,
well, you look like you're excited. I can sort of see that you can't wait to get going and get this thing underway.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I've been waiting for this for a long time, and I've been preparing for it since I played high school ball. So hopefully it's the start of a successful, long career.
Well, continued success. I hope it works out great for you.
one of the dumbest things anybody's ever said to anybody. Good luck. I hope it works out for you. I guess it worked out pretty well for you, Tom.